Welcome to the Call to Flourish podcast, sponsored by Divine Mercy University. My name is Thomas Cronquist, and I'm the co-host with Father Charles Sikorsky, the president of DMU. Father Charles, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Tom. Looking forward to our next part here with George.
Well, as you know, we have a very interesting episode again this afternoon with George Forsythe, who was a policeman for 25 years, then became a therapist after earning his counseling degree here at DMU. And in his practice, he sees only first responders, and he's going to tell us more about his experience as a police officer and the mental health challenges first responders face, especially PTSD and some of the therapies and advice and counseling he gives them. So, George, welcome again to the Call to Flourish podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here again.
It sounds like you know in your current work, you're seeing police and firefighters and maybe military.
I certainly would see them. I see police, firefighters. I'll tell you two groups that I don't see enough of, but I see that really need to get more attention. Correctional officers. I mean, they are the ultimate first responders. You can't get in there. The police, they can't call the police or the fire department. They have to let the police or fire department in after they've already gone to whatever they went to. And they have shootings, rapes, assaults, suicides. And the other one is dispatchers. Dispatchers have to hear this and go right to the next call. They can hear officers whom they know screaming. They hear women screaming that somebody's breaking in the house. They'll hear somebody screaming, holding somebody who's dying.
I never thought of that, but can you imagine?
Yeah.
Well, like a 911 operator, but actually at the police department where you're getting.
Yeah. And you're talking, I didn't realize until, people who seek therapy in those lines of work are some of the bravest people in the world. So there was some dispatchers who were brave enough to say, I need to go talk to somebody, get some help. And I hope I helped them, but I definitely got an education as to their experiences.
So, you're seeing these people in therapy. You mentioned you also get asked from time to time to give talks to different, groups or offices or different precincts. I don't know what they would be called, but so just comes to mind, how many do most departments have services for this where you would call it, I don't know, the compassion fatigue or just self-care? And is that, to what degree is that lacking? And, how could more efforts be made to help officers not just fall into all these terrible.
You're starting to see it more. The peer support movement is huge. Critical incident teams, I can't remember, they call them different things. Critical incident, so if there's a critical incident, they have peers who will come and check on you at a lot of especially the bigger departments. Here in Maryland, Baltimore City, for example, Vernon Haran, who used to be a Maryland State Trooper, goes all over the country giving talks on resilience. Gunny in Prince George's County, they're working with officers and they have peer support teams in place. I got a call today from a peer support member of a fire department where a firefighter had a traumatic incident and struggling. Would I be willing to talk to him? So you see a lot with the peer support. Crisis response teams, that you're seeing a lot with them. One of the problems is, I've heard it before, and I'm not saying this is true, this is a perception sometimes people have, is that if I go speak to somebody who's part of the agency, well, then the agency is going to know what I'm talking about. But at the end of the day, if I'm a therapist working for the, ABC Police Department, well, the ABC Police Department signs my paycheck, and that's a lot of power to tell me what is Officer Jones talking about. We need to do this or that. So I get quite a few who have they'll come see me because they don't really want to talk to the department. Mm-hmm. Trust is huge in this population anyways. If there's a population that struggles with trust, this is it.
And in your background, I would imagine that helps the trust. Like, would most of these folks even consider someone who hasn't been in the profession?
Some would. I mean, there's plenty of therapists right here in Maryland who work with first responders, who work with an alliance is an alliance. If you trust somebody and they're willing to listen, for example, dispatchers, I was never a dispatcher, but I know enough about what they do, and now I've been educated by them where I can help them. But there are a lot of people who call me for the only reason is I called you because you were a police officer. I don't really even advertise. I'm on Psychology Today like everybody is, but I don't have any advertising or like other than a website. I have a Facebook page, Driftwood Psychotherapy has a Facebook page, but it's all word of mouth.
Word of mouth.
Yeah. And different. Well, there's a treatment facility, for example, here in Maryland called Harbor of Grace, where that's for addictions, mostly addictions, trauma also, for all first responders. So everybody in there from all over the country is a first responder. And I've sent a lot of people there and they send people to me. So things like that, but mostly word of mouth. Like I remember there was one point there was a firefighter, and then he must have referred like 3 or 4 of his fellow firefighters. It was a joke. I used to tell him, I said, man, maybe we should have a group of you and all your friends. Just do it.
Yeah. We talked a little bit at the beginning about, first, we have this incredibly stressful occupation and so many different traumatic experiences they go through. And now, we've seen the last several years, and obviously we're not saying every police officer is an angel. Sometimes police do the wrong thing, clearly. But there's been quite a reaction to, police crimes. And do you see that? Is that making it even more stressful? And also, well, the body cameras, maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. But just this idea of you're in life and death situations many times. So you've got sort of this growing dislike of police, but also maybe feeling like their hands are now tied behind their back. How do you see that as far as morale and stress and this whole difficulty that they have to do such a thing, that which, on the other hand, what a noble, heroic way to live and to serve the common good and to serve our society. So have you seen that escalation, I guess, of some of these problems because of that?
Absolutely. The stress level's incredible. I hear all the time, I'm not afraid of getting in trouble. I'm afraid of getting arrested. Not even because I did anything wrong, but because there's a riot. In Baltimore City, they arrested 6 officers and had to drop all the charges on all of them because they never should have been arrested in the first place. But there's a riot, so they arrested them. There's a fear out there now, a fear of, and it's a misconception. The overwhelming majority of police officers like having body cameras because it way reduces the false complaints. It way reduces this guy made a racial or sexual slur to me, because you're mad at him and you want to punish him. So, well, okay, then let's go to the camera. Camera will say. Now, but the camera also catches things that aren't necessarily a crime. The language can get a little rough sometimes. It gets a little heated. They're humans. If they're being cussed at, they may cuss back. And so they can get in trouble for that, with the cameras and everything. But most officers like the body cameras. The body camera protects them more than hurts them. They actually like having them. But with the climate now, I think it might be changing. I think the climate is changing. There's just a rush to judgment that the police are wrong. You can show a video clip of 3 seconds without showing the whole video clip. Baltimore City had a shooting not too long ago of a young male who got shot in the back by the police officer. I think it was one of the newspapers or the news. Police shoot black teen in the back. Well, somebody posted the picture of the kid running with clearly a handgun in his hand. So yeah, I may be shooting, but the article doesn't say, was my partner coming around the corner and was going to be head first with this guy with a gun? Was he running to get behind something so he had some cover to shoot back? The article doesn't go into all that. It just makes it as inflammatory as it can possibly be. And a police officer, he's not allowed to get on the news and say, whoa, that's wrong. Here's what happened. He can say nothing. So sure, are there horrible things the problem is when a police officer does something When they do something bad, it's usually really bad. That's really bad. If a police officer, if he gets drunk, he's crashing into a McDonald's or something. It's just everything's big. And so when those things happen on the news, I always say, if it happened all the time, it wouldn't make the news. For example, Baltimore City has about 300 homicides a year. Name one of them. You can't. Name one of the situations. You really wouldn't be able to. You have to really think to come up with one of the shootings. Why? Because it happens all the time. It's second page news. Man shot another man on such and such street. But when police, a police officer does it in Utah or something, or Illinois, it's national news all over the place. And the reason is because it doesn't happen all the time. It is unusual. People are still shocked by it. And also there's a segment of the population that does want to defund the police that I don't know why. I think they get there's money, getting their money from it or something. Organizations that get money from this kind of thing. So yeah, the officers, that is a large part of their stress right now on the police end. That is a large part of it. Across the board, first responders are under a lot of stress, but police, that's their biggest one. Or that's a major one.
Right. Wow.
I literally hear it all the time. If a new officer comes in here, if he doesn't tell me the stress of the current climate out there, I'd be amazed.
And just so, for those who might be considering a counseling degree, or maybe even are first responders themselves, and maybe thinking about a second career, what would your advice, or what would your, and they're trying to discern this, would you have any thoughts or words for them?
Please, I'll help you. Please do it. There are in Maryland, there are already people who were police officers, retired police officers, who are therapists. And I hear all the time from police officers and firefighters who are like, yeah, I would really like to do what you do. And they would be excellent. They would really be excellent. Please do it. I'm going to be expanding, and I would love to find somebody who was a first responder at one time who could help. I'm just getting so many requests. I'd like to just expand here, and I could see more. So yeah, I would say definitely do it, and definitely go to Divine Mercy University, especially if because they really do. Divine Mercy University really does. They have some professors there. Dr. Keys comes to mind, who is an expert in trauma.
Yeah, and you've mentioned that before, and I know you've gone through his. There's a trauma course in the counseling program, but there's also a continuing education unit led by Dr. Keys, which deals with all kinds of trauma and PTSD.
Yeah,
I suppose that's why you've got interested in just seeing all of this, that experience of PTSD.
Yeah, the Green Cross, the Green Cross classes that are taught by Dr. Keys. So first of all, he is an expert, national expert, probably international expert when it comes to trauma and treating trauma. And he's teaching you. If you get a weekend, a Friday and a Saturday with him. I've learned more from that guy than I know I drove him crazy through the years, but like I drive everybody crazy, but I have really learned a lot from that guy. And so the Green Cross classes, you can have, there's domestic violence classes on working with domestic violence, classes on child sexual trauma. There's classes on compassion fatigue, classes on PTSD. It'd be great for some of these peer support organizations to send their people to that and get some extra training for what's a really reasonable price. Even EMDR, eye movement desensitization, reprocessing. I use that with trauma all the time. He teaches it there cheaper than you could find it anywhere.
Okay. Your training at Divine Mercy University is not just the best scientific theories, but we also want to blend faith and values and virtues and so forth into therapy. And do you use any? Do you have any special patrons or people that you look to inspire that way, or to inspire your clients?
For me personally, who inspires me is I came across the story of Father Solanus Casey. I believe he died he was alive when they could take black and white pictures. I know that. So I think in the 50s, 1950s or something, he died. And Father Solanus, I liked him. He was an Irish family, large family. Family was so large that they'd have to split up mass. One Sunday, the horse and carriage would take one half of the family. The next Sunday would take the other half of the family. And so large Irish family, parents were from Ireland, but he was born in this country. As a matter of fact, if he's canonized, I think I heard he'd be the first American-born saint. I believe there's a female. I think.
Oh yeah. The men have to catch up. Yeah, of course we have Mother Seton, right?
That's what I was thinking of, Mother Seton. But so Solanus Casey had a lot of different jobs. I read he was a correctional or a jail guard, correctional officer of some form. He was a trolley operator, security guard, all these different jobs. And he decided he was going to be his brother was a priest. His brother became a priest, entered the seminary, became a priest. He was going to do the same thing. And he went to a seminary that was German. Classes were in German. It was a German seminary. And he didn't speak German. So right away, he was in a way, he was like a cop going to a college that doesn't speak counseling, So and in my early days, I'll tell you a real quick story with Professor Sharp was one of the early residencies at Divine Mercy. We had to role play, and I was role playing with this young woman who was she was role playing that she was a bullied high school girl, and I had to counsel her. And they knew we weren't counselors; they just wanted us to work with them, to learn some of the skills. I was lost in like 2 minutes. In 2 minutes, I had nothing. 3 minutes, I had nothing. I wanted to solve the problem. There is no problem solving. It's a 14-year-old who's getting bullied in school. Unless I went and bodyguarded her, there would be no solution. And I didn't know what to do. And so he asked me, he said, George, it looks like you're stuck. And I said, yes, I am stuck. And he said, weren't you some kind of undercover cop? And I said, yes, I was. So what I want you to do is pretend you're an undercover cop working as a counselor. Man, it clicked. I just went into role-playing mode and pretended I was doing what I thought counselors would do to make you believe I was a counselor, and it helped. But anyway, back to Solanus Casey. Solanus Casey, he went to this German seminary. He doesn't speak German, so his grades were poor, and he barely graduated. Not that he was unintelligent, it's just there was a language barrier. And so he became a monk, and he was at a monastery, and the rules were he could not hear confession and he could not preach a homily. I guess because of his theology wasn't as up to snuff, he didn't pass the theology portions. So they didn't want him up there, preaching when he didn't even know the thing. They thought he didn't even know the theology. So they gave him the job as porter, which the porter, he sits at the front, and anybody coming to the monastery, dropping off a package. I want a prayer. I need some help with food. Can you pray for my sick child? Can I get some advice? Whatever. First stop at the monastery is the porter. And he became so well known for two things, his listening and his advice, that there are pictures of people lining up to come into the monastery to see him. Even people of other faiths. There's pictures of Orthodox Jewish people coming to him to get advice as a holy man, and that's what he became known for. So he's always been a encouragement to me because I'm smart, but not that smart. I'm smart. I'm smart. I'm smart. I'm smart enough. Smart enough. But I'm not. I'm not. I'm certainly not the best therapist out there. I am definitely not the best therapist out there. And if you haven't noticed, I do like to talk, and I do struggle with listening. I could talk more than I listen. So he became an inspiration to me, as somebody who is just known to be a deep listener. So I keep his statue next to my clock, which is next. The clients sit here. There's a clock where I can kind of keep track of the time, and it's not a distraction for them. I can look right by them and see the clock, and he's right there. And there's been many times I've looked over. There's this statue. I put it over here. I've looked over and seen that expression looking at me like, George, stop talking. I'm getting that expression actually right now. I'm actually getting that expression right now. George, stop talking.
So, well, that was great. Yeah. So, actually, an interesting person for maybe a patron of counseling, because it all starts with listening. And even in spiritual counseling or spiritual direction, I know you help out. You have helped out with our spiritual direction course and doing those role plays.
Yeah, I supervise them. Yeah.
Yeah, so it sounds like you have a real gift for role plays, given all the different roles you've had to play.
Yeah, I've played a lot of different roles.
Yeah. Wow. Very good.
Do you feel like you are responding to the calling you heard? Are you where you think the Lord has called you? Do you feel fulfilled now in your vocation, as it were?
That is an excellent question. Really excellent question. One I think about a lot. I hope I am. I feel like I am. I feel at peace in what I'm doing. I really feel like this is a ministry. I sometimes wonder, I like to, I'm a visual guy, and I like to visualize, gospel stories and everything else. And I visualized myself. Sometimes I'll visualize myself with my picture of what Jesus would look like, talking with him. And I remember one time I was doing it, and I was like, what's next? I was trying to get like what's next out of him. And it wasn't a calling or anything. It wasn't a spiritual experience. And I'm not saying Jesus talked to me, but when I was thinking about this, or maybe he did, I could see him laughing. And he hit me on the back and he said, I guess we'll see. Like, I know, but you don't know.
Yeah, that's a great one. Come follow me. Where?
Yeah, I don't know
come follow me. Trust me.
Yeah, I don't know where things will lead. I'm trying to get out of my own way. I surrendered my schedule to God. I work on surrender. Where he leads, I'm gonna go.
And George, I understand you just you're completing a book about your experiences. Tell us just for a moment about that, and when would that come out?
I'm hoping it'll be out by the time this airs on Amazon.com. It's done. It's just I'm doing the Amazon administrative stuff, and that book is called "I Am That Centurion" by me, George Forsythe. My journey from cop to counselor. And I use that book to go into anything I thought was a big part of what led to this call today, looking backwards. Things that happened in my childhood, experiences that I've had, law enforcement stories, undercover. I put stories in there of undercover. I have a story in there about when I was in jail undercover. I have a story about my own trauma where I worked an undercover deal at gunpoint. And then it ends with there's a part of the gospel where the centurion at the cross was always real powerful for me. So I identified with that particular that centurion, and so I kind of tie it all together at the end of the book with that. But it's called "I Am That Centurion: My Journey from Cop to Counselor." Hopefully, it'll be out by the time this airs.
In the centurion, I love that name and that image that you're using there, for your book. Reminds me of, the movie The Passion of the Christ at the end. The centurion, when the blood comes out of Christ, it splashes on him and he just gets down on his knees. That contact with Christ just overwhelmed him. and converts them. And, you know, it's the way I think our Lord, you never know when he's going to reach out and splash us with his love, his grace, and the way, his very being, his blood, that helps us to realize who he is and just changes our lives. That's what happened to the centurion there at the cross.
Can you imagine? You just realized that you executed the Savior of the world. Can you imagine how that would hit?
That's a great thing to think about.
In a certain sense, we all did.
Yeah.
Church teaches us we did because of our sins and our failings. We did. So, well, George, I want to thank you so much for joining us in this podcast, and we're going to have you back and talk more.
I would love that. Yeah.
And just pray for your ministry. It's a tremendous ministry, and please pray for the continued success of Divine Mercy University, that we find
I do all the time. Yeah.
more students and more graduates who can follow in your footsteps.
Yeah, it would be great.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Thank you, Father Charles.